Well, we don't have to imagine. We can see what they're doing in China. Here in America, of course, not just moving away the environmental restrictions to let these people come in and do whatever they wish, not only the financial incentivization that Trump is bribing local councils with. I mean, just imagine what's going on. They're being bribed by the corporations. They're being bribed by Trump. And of course, all of this is the same type of thing that we see from the two front-running candidates in Tennessee for Republican governor, both of them saying, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to give us a lot of jobs. Well, you know, they're spending about $70 to $80 million per job created because these things don't create a lot of jobs. After the construction phase is over, there's not any jobs that are created with this stuff. And so this is the usual canard that you see when they're talking about building stadiums or something like that. It is an absolute lie. It is a head fake. But we've seen it over and over again. And that's where Marsha Blackburn and Rose both are in terms of what they're looking at in the future with this, how they're trying to sell it. Oh, it's going to be a great jobs program. And Trump says that as well. You're going to make so much money because I'm going to send it to you if you build a police state. Only Fort Bliss and Dugway Proving Grounds have been awarded so far. Even those remain conditional pending negotiation, but beyond them, federal contracting documents show the Army is considering data centers at Fort Hood, Texas, and Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Dugway is remote by design, although not every site is. Contracting documents, however, show the Army is weighing a parcel at Fort Hood that is within a half mile of residential and commercial property. And of course, that is significant because you look at the noise that comes from these generators 24/7. It is deafening and persistent. Fort Bragg is within 1 mile of civilian areas and within a half mile of civilian housing. Excuse me. So we have Army officials say they're ready to go. They're ready to pull this. They said their proposals, however, must include net zero water usage and a power plant that does not draw on the local electrical grid. So they're going to be very noisy. But the good news about this is that they're not going to use the water supply. Is that really the issue? As Matt Trujillo was pointing excuse me. As Matt Trujillo was pointing out, it really is the surveillance aspect. Don't call them data centers. They're surveillance centers. And if we're going to focus on the water and the power and the noise issues, and those are all big issues, but if we're going to focus on those, they can assuage that. They can come up with recycling water systems and so forth. It's the surveillance, stupid. That's the real issue, you know, as James Carville said. Don't worry about Bill Clinton and his sexual assaults. It's the economy, stupid. Well, it's, you know, that was a problem. And the water usage, the power usage, the noise, those are all real problems. But it's the surveillance, stupid. That's what you got to focus on. Bidders were also required to describe plans for local outreach and engagement. How are you going to assuage people that you are their friend? Yeah, that's what we're seeing over and over again. Don't think this is going to be used for defense, as a matter of fact. Again, like I said at the top of the program, James Madison warned us. Always the means of defense will be abroad, will be the means of tyranny at home. And that is especially true when you got these Republican candidates out there saying, well, we got to do it because of jobs and because of China. We got to beat China. We got to be even worse than they are. So, this is supposedly about fighting crime, is it? Well, as I pointed out, in Atlanta, where Flock is headquartered, they put in 5,000 cameras. What has happened to the crime rate there? It's actually increased in serious crimes. And in terms of what you would think they would be able to really have a home run with, because they sell these things as automated license plate readers, you would think that you would see a drop-off in car crime in terms of car theft and things like that. No. It was like 0.2% decrease, according to FBI crime statistics. So that's essentially in the noise. It's essentially flat. It had absolutely no effect on fighting crime. But that's not really what these things are about. When you look at this, the cops in Wapello County, Iowa, don't want people to know. They've got a usage policy They say, keep this a secret. Do not mention, after you use this, don't mention it to the occupants of the car. Don't say anything about it unless you're being asked by a lawyer. In that particular case, don't lie about it. But don't volunteer this information. Don't let them know. It's a secret, right? Just like the national security secret. Whenever the government keeps secrets from people, that should be a tip-off, shouldn't it? And so we got a Flock employee who's quitting in disgust, saying the company is silencing protesters. He said, make sure this resistance doesn't become a vote that is reflected in the vote of the council. That was his mission statement. He was somebody that was supposed to go out and sell these things as a crime-fighting tactic. We're going to make everybody safe. And we see the same types of underhanded tactics being done here locally in Johnson City and in Knoxville. They're putting out questionnaires to try to push people in these polls and to take the temperature of the public so they know how to manipulate us. A former Flock employee has quit the company in disgust, saying it lied to workers about how the surveillance cameras are going to be used, and then that it used dirty tricks to silence its critics. He joined the company as a government affairs manager 2 years ago. His job was to represent Flock's product, quote, as best as possible, making sure that we can get approved at the council. That was his mission statement. He said he earnestly believed at the time that the license plate scanning cameras would help to find missing persons, not be used to conduct mass surveillance. But of course, none of this has happened, not even in the place where they have the highest concentration of them. His belief in the country's vision was shattered when he was confronted by locals who strongly opposed Flock cameras being set up. That's when he realized that his job was, in reality, to, quote, make sure that this resistance doesn't become a vote that's reflected in the vote of the council. He said, this facade that we were helping was that we had these democratically elected boards, but we were going to work with them in secret to get this stuff installed. And that is exactly what they do. He said he realized as they were selling the data to ICE as well as Border Patrol what this really was about. The fact that this was creating a national police force, a national police state. And so he has resigned in disgust. But again, all of this stuff, when we say this is about license plate readers, just take a look at this. This is a Flock camera.
I realize what it is. There's a man.
No cars anywhere around.
Place. He's the one who's doing it.
It's very easy to see what's going on here. See, here's the tunnel and here is the camera. Now let's go ahead and zoom into the camera. You can see very clearly that it is pointed directly at the tunnel, and there it is. The reason for this is because these cameras are not just being used for license plate reading anymore. They are now being pointed in locations that they think there might be heightened criminal activity, so they may think that some criminals are going to do things in this tunnel. The problem is that we were told that these are license plate readers, but they're not being used for that. They're being used for mass surveillance of areas where they think that crimes might occur. So as you can see, it is already expanding to what it was not supposed to be.
And of course, 6 years ago, if you're just riding your bicycle, that would be a crime, right? During the lockdown. You know, what are they going to do with this next pandemic, next lockdown, whatever the MacGuffin is that they choose to lock us down with? Well, if we look at the EU, they're selling another measure to improve security and safety. If you're flying into the EU now, they have a biometric system that they've implemented for non-EU citizens. So if you're an American, you're going to get caught up in the long delays, and they point out, and also short tempers that are happening because of this. But look at the absolute hypocrisy. As the EU refuses to protect its borders from third world people who are coming across, they subject their citizens and people who are operating legally, tourists or whatever, they subject them to this draconian security measure. They are taking the time as people come in to get facial biometrics, to get fingerprints and everything else like that. And that takes time. For example, this one woman had been traveling for 23 hours from South America. She landed in Brussels only to face a demoralizing sight that has become all too common for foreign travelers. Long, long lines for passport control that were barely moving. She stood in line for 5 hours and 15 minutes. after flying for 23 hours from South Africa. There were only 6 border security stations, and they had about 1,000 people waiting in line. She said she waited so long in line that the rental company gave away her car, and she had to pay about $740 more to get another one. This is the cost of the security state, folks. If you're going to let them scare you into giving up your liberty, your freedom, and your dignity, this will be the price that you will pay. And this is just the beginning. It gets even worse after they get the data, how they will use it. Europe's new biometric border system takes fingerprints and facial scans at the border of the people who are coming in legally. They're not going to do anything for the people who come in boats or come over borders, wide open for the illegal invaders. Meanwhile, the cyber attacks on U.S. systems, as I talked about this, I said, first of all, they're lying to you if they tell you that it's from Iran. They have absolutely no way to prove that. They can't tell where a cyber attack is coming from. This has been known for many years. It's just a bluff, and people are lying to you for political purposes when they finger someone and say it's coming from them. Who is really responsible for the cyber attacks? Well, it's the people who put devices online. And I said that. I said, what in the world? Why in the world would you put a water system online? Why would you connect it to the internet? Well, here's what they're doing. They have devices known as programmable logic controllers, PLCs. That's what somebody foolishly connected to the internet. I don't know why they would do that unless they want to be able to just sit in their office and punch a button, but then that exposes it. I mean, can't they set up a local area network to do that if that's what they want to, how they want to run this? So this was a cybersecurity professor at Georgia Tech was talking about what happened in Atlanta, but he told the Atlanta station that he and his researchers had found thousands of vulnerabilities at 7,000 institutions across the country. They sounded the alarm. They said these things have been misconfigured to be exposed to the internet. And I would say that not only were they misconfigured to be exposed to the internet, they probably didn't change the default password either that is in there. He said, what we realized, one person was looking at it, so we realized that some of our pumping stations went down. Things could get really dangerous if they were to be manipulated or attacked or disturbed. But of course, they're not going to change the password, and they're going to connect these things to the internet without even thinking twice. Well, you know, when we look at this, and I said, this is our opportunity because we have a bipartisan resistance to this. This is something that, when you look at the police state tactics of ICE, wearing the mask, not having identification, forgetting about all of the standard tactics that have been taken by standard law enforcement, it gets muddy because there's a lot of people who support the general stated purpose of this, and they don't draw a line between the end and the means. They don't make a distinction between those things. But as everybody is looking at these data centers, and as the general public is getting less and less enthralled with AI, to say the least, there is no use case for this as far as we're all concerned. We don't need this network of cameras. We don't need this network of surveillance centers, the data centers. And then in addition to that, people are seeing the big negative consequences that are there. So there is no constituency. There is no end game for any of this. You've got some candidates, like here in Tennessee, the 2 Republican frontrunners, Marsha Blackburn and Rose, who's a congressman. They're out there talking, it'll be a jobs program. It'll fight China. Sorry, that dog don't hunt. And we need to push back against that. And as I said, I've interviewed Monty Fritz, who is the 3rd candidate who's running. He's not very far behind Congressman Rose in terms of the polls, but both of them were pretty far behind Marsha Blackburn. And I said, I know this guy is right on the issues, and I asked him to come on. He's very busy here just the last couple of days before the election. He's got his schedule is filled up. But I said, at least give me a statement. He said, well, we don't have a statement. I said, you better put one together. This is the defining issue, in my opinion, and it ought to be in your opinion as well. If we lose on this issue, folks, we lose on everything. And if we lose on this issue, the people that you don't like, once they get power, are going to use this tool in a very weaponized way against you. You want to talk about weaponized government? That's what happens when you got a surveillance state that's being put in place. So I searched for money, Fritz, and again, that article that I read to you yesterday, where they got statements from 2 Republican candidates, 2 Democrat candidates coming up, but they said that they didn't get a response from Monty Fritz. I know he's got a shoestring campaign, but he is right on the issues. I went back and I did a search. There's what I found in terms of a summary. I'll just summarize it from the articles that I found. He opposes both data centers and flock license plate readers. He argues that these technologies represent corporate interests and unchecked government surveillance that infringe on the rights, the health, and the privacy of Tennesseans. On data centers, he criticizes the use of taxpayer funding. He says it is a strain on electricity and water resources, threats to local sovereignty and property rights. He supports local moratoriums, and he believes out-of-state entities are exploiting Tennessee. Well, he's absolutely right on that. And it's not just local moratoriums. You've got a Democrat, one of the Democrat candidates that I read yesterday, Adam Kurtz, said he wanted to have a statewide ban on data centers. I agree with that. I think that is the right approach. We cannot leave this to local governments that we've seen over and over again are just putty in the hands of these corporations and the federal government who are throwing cash at them. It's very easy to get them turned. You also had a Democrat, Tim Sear, CYR, who said we need to ban these NDAs for city councils and utility companies. And that is also the correct approach, I believe. He said on flock cameras, Monty Fritz said it violates the Fourth Amendment, of course, yes. Tracking innocent citizens without warrants. And he opposes any public-private partnerships with flock. And yet his rivals are out there telling everybody it's a jobs program and we're using this to beat China. He really needs to put a statement out. This really should be the central issue. I just don't understand why they aren't going harder on this. As a matter of fact, before I leave and take a quick break here, this is an article from Free Thought Project. The headline is perfect. Dear America, we do not beat China in the AI race if we become China in the AI race. And, politics can sometimes be funny until it gets really bad. And we have this dark humor. This is an ad from Marsha Blackburn, who's running for governor here in Tennessee. And when I saw this, I thought this was an AI parody. It's so stupid. This woman is unbelievably stupid and dishonest. But it actually is a legit campaign ad that she put out. She's in a Chinese restaurant talking about how we need to have AI to fight China.
How hard am I going to crack down on China? Well, here's a clue.
Marsha Blackburn
Clueless.
worked with President Trump.
She's crumbling fortune cookies.
China. As governor, Marsha will fight to protect Tennessee land from Chinese front companies.
Yeah, protect us from the
and hunt down
corporations who are making a fortune,
tries to
Marsha.
It doesn't take a fortune cookie to figure it out. Here in Tennessee, we're going to stop communist China and protect Tennessee land.
She is, and it is with a little cat that's waving that you see all over China everywhere. I don't know what it is about that, but it was ubiquitous when we were there.
A commercial like that should be a death sentence for her political career.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
People should look at that and go, I could never vote for this woman. This is an idiot.
I can't. I just don't understand that. As a matter of fact, when she was the one who got her 15 minutes of fame when she asked Ketanji Brown Jackson in the Supreme Court confirmation hearings, what is a woman? Well, Marsha, what is China? And what is surveillance state? Can you explain those? Can you define those for me? Do you care about what those are? And if you're going to start crumbling fortune cookies in a Chinese restaurant, how about the fortune that Trump is squandering out of the federal government in order to build these things? What about the fortunes that are being dumped on local governments by these big corporations to get them to set up the surveillance state? This is beyond stupid what she is doing. And I will absolutely not. I may wind up voting for a Democrat for the first time in my life because I think this issue is so fundamental. When you look at this, if we have this data flock system that's in, Think about how that's going to be weaponized by the people that you don't want in office when they get in office, because that happens all the time. And I certainly don't want her in office. I can understand how she would use this. This was the raw, unfiltered message from Donald Trump at his ratepayer protection pledge. He said, you can't fight it. You got to go with it because the money is going to be there. I'm going to make sure you get the money. My tech sponsors are going to make sure you get the money. You can't go with it. You're going to make a lot of money if you build a police surveillance state. Will you sell us out for money? Yes, Marsha will. And so will Congressman Rose. They will both sell us out. They'll sell out the Constitution. They will destroy our liberty, our freedom, and our dignity. Don't be deceived by these people. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at davidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. davidknightshow.com.